Hi, this is Jackie, your host of Out of Crazy Town. Today's guest is Chelsey Cole, a licensed psychotherapist, speaker, and best-selling author who specializes in narcissistic abuse and complex trauma. In this episode, we break down what narcissistic abuse really is, how a narcissist's need for control shows up during divorce, and why understanding different types of narcissism matters, what rebuilding self-worth actually looks like, and the communication strategies that truly work when you're dealing with a high conflict personality. All right, welcome Chelsey Cole. I'm so excited to have you on Out of Crazy Town. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You are such an expert in this space on narcissistic abuse, and we can never get enough education on this topic for this audience. So I just wanted to quickly tell listeners a little bit about you and then jump into some questions that I have for you. You are a best-selling author and speaker and specializing in narcissistic abuse and complex trauma, and you're the author of If Only I'd Known How to Outsmart a Narcissist or Outsmart Narcissists, Set Guilt-Free Boundaries, and Create Unshakable Self-Worth. So I have already perused your book, but I need to finish it because, again, can't get too much education on the subject. And your work's been featured in USA Today, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and you have an awesome program I want to talk about at the end called Rewired for Resilience. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's wonderful.
So I kind of wanted to start off with a fairly basic question for this audience. And audience, the reason I'm doing this is I want to build this conversation. And so even though we're all living with narcissistic abuse or have in the past, if you're listening, I wanted to ask you as an expert, what, in your words, what is narcissistic abuse? Since it's such a specific form.
Right. It's important to start here because narcissism has kind of been a buzzword these days. And so everybody's heard some form of a definition. So yes, narcissists are entitled. They're emotionally dysregulated. They tend to be grandiose. But the most important thing I think for people to know about narcissists is that they move about and exist in the world fundamentally differently than you do. They see relationships differently than you do. They think differently than you do. Often see survivors getting caught because we're trying to make sense of a narcissist based on who we are. So we are thinking, and I'll just lay out, most survivors tend to be quite agreeable. And I mean that not in the sense of, oh, you're just like an agreeable, kind person. That's part of it. But agreeableness is a personality construct, like being an introvert or extrovert. So when you're an agreeable person, you tend to be humble. You see the best in others. You believe in open, frank, honest conversations. Like you don't want to have deception in a conversation. You want to just be able to lay out what you want and know what they need as well. You value compromise, collaboration. You see giving as a form of self-fulfillment, not self-sacrifice. So you just naturally give because that's who you are. You want what's best for other people. You don't like chaos. And I think a lot of times we take for granted, doesn't everybody live like that? Like who wants chaos in their world? Who wants to go around manipulating and trying to see how better you are than everybody else? Don't we all just want to get along and compromise and like be empathetic? No, we don't.
Yeah. And I have this conversation all the time because we think, doesn't that require so much energy? Where do they get the energy for this? Like, it sounds exhausting.
Right. I hear that all the time. And that's why we have to start with understanding with narcissists, because narcissists are fundamentally disagreeable. So everything that I just said about how survivors are and how you're agreeable and empathetic and all those things, narcissists are fundamentally the opposite of that. They don't believe in being humble. They're fine with bragging. I think we all know that. They believe that a certain amount of deception is necessary in relationships, in conversations. And that's often because they see the world and other people as selfish, devious, and potentially dangerous. Mm-hmm. They see the world.
Do they think, so just thinking the opposite, like we assume everybody's kind of like us, do they assume everyone else in the world is on the take and deceiving?
They assume that other people are like them. So they're out to get people. So they assume people are out to get them. Mm-hmm. That envy and that a little bit of paranoia is actually common for narcissism.
Well said.
Because anybody who's been around a narcissist, you know, they think people are out to get them. They think people are thinking about them, plotting against them, looking at them, judging them, wanting what they have. Yeah. So it's very common, yes, that narcissists are thinking. That's why I said they see other people as selfish, devious, potentially dangerous because they are. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they believe deception is necessary in relationships. They are more likely to bully and intimidate to get their way rather than compromise or collaborate.
Yeah.
No narcissist is thinking, how can I be reasonable here? How can we make this a balanced relationship?
Mhm.
How can we find a reasonable compromise? And I think it's so important that people know that because we often go into conversations thinking, how can I be reasonable? I don't want to ask too much. We as a healthy person, you want a balanced relationship. You're uncomfortable if it's out of whack. You're giving a lot and that person isn't, or they're giving a lot to you and you're not. Like we want a balanced relationship. Narcissists do not. They are perfectly fine as long as they're getting their way. They don't care that they're not bothered by the fact that you're not getting what you need in the relationship. They are perfectly fine as long as their needs are being met.
Okay. So
So
this
that's the kind
sounds,
of person we're talking about.
and thank you so much for clarifying it because you're right. I think we do need to sometimes step back to square one
Yeah.
and really define who it is that we're dealing with and really understand them. And to me, a lot of what you're saying all boils down to control.
A lot of it is. Narcissists have a basic need for control, power, and dominance. And to your point on, isn't that exhausting? No, actually, that's what's fueling for them. For a healthy person, trying to control everything, trying to control people, trying to control their perceptions, being involved in chaos all the time. Like if you've ever been around a narcissist, you know how chaotic their lives are, their relationships are, everything about them is just chaos. And to them, that gives them fuel. Even being involved in gossip and triangulating. Did you know this happened with this and this? And you just want peace. But the chaos fuels them because that is actually what makes them feel special,
Mm,
entitled, like they're into something, like they know something, they're in the know.
yeah.
And it just fuels their grandiosity that they're just,
Yeah.
such an important person.
They're the expert. They're smarter than everyone else in the
Yeah.
room. Yeah, absolutely. And so, because this podcast is called Out of Crazy Town, Your Guide to Divorcing a Narcissist, how do you see that element of control show up in divorces?
Well, I'm glad that we set the stage knowing what type of person we're dealing with because I think a lot of people are very disappointed when they go into a divorce. They might think of hope of hopes. Maybe they're going to want to be reasonable for the kids. Maybe this is when at least we could end on decent terms. And you're going to be highly disappointed if that is your idea because
Yeah.
narcissists see divorce as an opportunity for control. They see it as competition. I was going to say the more assets you have, the more they have to control. But honestly, I've seen where even if you don't have a lot to argue about, narcissists drag it out.
I have too. I've seen divorces that there isn't a lot there financially and they still find ways. Yeah.
Now, whether there's kids, whether there's lots of finances, there's so much opportunity in a divorce for them to fuel that grandiosity, to have so much control. So these are often things that go on much longer than they need to. I mean, I know some people have tried to get divorced for years and they're
Yeah.
still just trying to get divorced because the narcissist has submitted frivolous lawsuits, they withhold documents, they falsify documents, they will absolutely lie on interrogatories. And then you feel like you're having to be the investigator to go tell your lawyer, like, that's not even true. They don't even have that, or they're hiding assets.
Hmm.
They won't give paperwork up until the very end and then still push you to want to mediate when they've given you 2 hours to look at, their paperwork and you submitted yours months ago.
Right.
So, and of course, if kids are involved, then there's even more opportunity for them to try to alienate the children, for them to put the kids in the middle. And I know healthy people are trying to do the exact opposite,
Hmm.
but narcissistic parents are going to try to get the kids on their side. They're not going to do what's best for their kids. I know that's really disappointing for people to hear, and there's a lot of grief that
Yeah.
comes, from recognizing that because you have to realize that this person may not be the spouse you ever wanted them to be, and they're not going to be the parent that you hoped for your children either.
Right. And I think also in that thread, one of the most devastating things I see my clients go through is they will almost be to the finish line, like it's right there. And then at the 11th hour, they do something or they refuse to sign a document they just agreed to. And
Right.
just to drag it on a little more, because I always say they do not want closure because closure means ending an aspect of control over you or an
Right.
opportunity to antagonize and yeah.
Right. It's like turning off the faucet. They always want that faucet open.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it's a drip, they'll take it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
great analogy. And so, what's funny, Chelsey, in all the years now with the S, I could say I've been doing this podcast and experts I have on. I don't think we've done a dive into the different types of narcissists. And I know,
Mm.
my clients are getting more and more astute at like, he or she is this kind of narcissist. And sometimes I even have to go back to the books and look it up.
Yeah.
Could you do like an overview for us of different
Yeah,
kinds?
for sure, because they can look different.
Yeah.
So the grandiose narcissist is the one we're most familiar with. This is the stereotypical narcissist. They're charming, they're charismatic, they can be fun, they can be the life of the party, but they are also very arrogant. They are bragging a lot, and they tend to be successful, honestly. Like, depending
Yeah.
on what room you're in, you could be in a room where 30% of the people are narcissists
Yeah.
with CEOs and C-suite and all of that. So the grandiose narcissist, we can sometimes see a little bit easier because they fit that stereotype. The vulnerable narcissist, often called the covert narcissist, is the one that's a lot trickier because they do not have an overly grandiose presentation. They don't look really charming or charismatic. In fact, what most people feel with a vulnerable narcissist is pity.
Mm,
And that's because vulnerable narcissists draw you in by getting you to feel sorry for them.
hmm.
So always encouraging people to be very mindful and very aware if you're around somebody and what you mainly leave feeling is like you've been wrung out, like you're a wash rag that's just been wrung out. You are exhausted, you just feel like you've given so much, or you always feel like you could do more. You're guilty if you set boundaries. You just feel sorry for them, and they always have stories about how people must have done them wrong, how they're not
Hmm.
where they could have been, not where they should have been, if only somebody would have seen them, somebody would have supported them, somebody would have helped them. And so a lot of times in the beginning of those relationships, it can feel like you're building something with someone. I'll say this from my experience. I went from a grandiose to a vulnerable narcissist because
Wow.
I did not know there were different types.
Yeah. You thought for sure I have someone different because he's behaving like
Exactly.
this instead of that. Wow.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
good to point out.
Yeah. I thought, and again, I like to say that because I'm a therapist. And I
Yeah.
was a therapist at the time, and I didn't see it. So we really
Right.
can't be hard on ourselves. Like, this
No,
can happen to
no,
anybody. I
no.
didn't make sense of what narcissism was, so I didn't know at the
Yeah,
time.
you didn't know. So I have actually two questions. One, because like I know what category I would put my quote narcissist in would be more
Hmm.
grandiose. But then he definitely used the tools of a vulnerable narcissist, for instance, sometimes to draw me in. So are there
Yeah.
different aspects sometimes where one will just be more dominant overall, but they do display
Yes.
other types?
So this can get a little nuanced because any narcissist has both grandiose and vulnerable traits.
Okay, that makes
Think
sense.
of it's like the if narcissism were a coin, you've got the grandiose side and the vulnerable side. Both exist. Narcissists tend to have a flavor to them
Okay,
where one side is showing more than the other.
that makes sense.
The grandiose narcissist also tends to be more successful, more extroverted, more socially adept, but they can certainly, if they're not getting their supply needs met, so they're not being validated, admired, maybe they just got fired, maybe someone just left them and they're feeling low,
Hmm.
then the more vulnerable side can come out. But once that supply need hits again, they're going to be back to, Mr. and Miss Charming and charismatic and big life of the party.
That makes a lot of sense because at some point you see them pretty much all play the victim card. I mean, that's such an
Yes.
important card for them to play to keep the all the shenanigans going. So, and the
Right.
torment and so okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for pointing that out. And then my other question is, so for someone who's out there listening going, "Oh my gosh, Chelsey was duped twice." Because there were they're both narcissists, but with different sort of outward
Yep.
exposing personality traits. We can't control the whole world and who we run into. So, what can we do when we're out in the world and we're dating again or whatnot? What are just
Yeah.
some really good guidelines that we can all have that help
Hmm.
us move forward in the world, whether it's friendships, relationships, or otherwise?
Yeah. And I think it's important that we do talk about that because sometimes we can have our narcissist radar on all the time, and it's hard to see anybody who's not. Like, we're
Yeah,
looking at everything and every behavior and every text, and we're analyzing it, and we're putting it chat GPT, like, is this passive aggressive? What does this show? And that understandable. And I think there certainly is a period in our healing where we have to allow that.
I
You
agree.
have
Yeah.
to allow that to be okay because I'll say in my experience, I had to get to the point where I was not willing for anybody to tell me who I was anymore. I
Hmm.
wasn't going to be told who I was. And I had to set boundaries for better or worse. If I misjudged a healthy person and I saw a pink flag as a red flag, that just had to be okay.
Hmm.
for the time being because I had to trust myself. I could no longer sacrifice myself until I had built more self-trust and self-worth.
Yeah.
So I certainly think there's a period where that has to be okay. And at the same time, I think we can get stuck there. And then sometimes that adds into rumination and hypervigilance, where some people just swear off relationships altogether, whether romantic or anyone. And then we just isolate and kind of stay stuck in that post-traumatic reaction.
Mm.
So the two biggest things, thinking about outwardly, externally, what we can see in other people, patterns and behavior over time. It's so difficult after a narcissistic relationship. We tend to want to put people in buckets. Can I trust you or can I not trust you? Are you good or are you not good? Like, I just want to know. And so we're trying to determine sometimes on day one, what bucket am I putting you in? And the reality is you can't know. Nobody can
Okay.
know.
Okay.
So there's no, here's the one thing. Here's the, if they do this on a date, you're out. There's so many reasons people could be doing something and you're seeing an anomaly that's not reflective of their overall pattern. So as hard as it is, we have to also sit with that tension and discomfort of, I'm just going to take a step back and I'm going to take a we'll see approach. We'll see how
Yeah.
things go. I don't know how this relationship might turn out. And that's actually quite empowering because you don't have to do the ping pong in your head. You
Yeah.
don't have to sit ruminating. You can give yourself time and space, see this person over time, see them in different environments, see them around different people, talk to other people who know them and see what other people also have to say about them, and let the patterns and the behaviors unfold.
I love that because I think pretty much everyone listening probably could say that their relationship went really fast. We know that very often, maybe not
Yes.
always, but very often, that is a strategy with people with this
Mm-hmm.
personality type is to have the relationship move so fast. And that's because they don't want you sitting back and noticing, right?
Right.
And so that's what you're saying is like, take your time. Because really, when you take your time and you step back and you let things unfold, you're taking back control.
Yep, you are. Because you're slowing down enough to actually hear your intuition.
Yeah.
And you're right. Narcissists tend to move, pathological people, psychopaths, that whole cluster B kind of personality, they move really quickly because that is when they can get control. They can push you to do things. They can push you to ignore your boundaries, to not trust your gut, to get you to question yourself, like even if there's a gut feeling you have about them. But if you're moving so quickly, and you're
Hmm.
so uncomfortable sitting in that we'll see space, then you are more likely to make decisions that ultimately you'll be unhappy with because you're going to ignore red flags that
Right.
you need to see because you're trying to move too quickly, or you're going to ignore your gut that's telling you something because you just want to decide, okay, can I trust them or not? So I just want to put my blinders on and just trust them and go in 100% because it's so uncomfortable to just wait and see.
Right.
But that's what they're banking on.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's really the taking time thing is so important as well, because I would say it gives you a chance to put all your little, even mini boundaries in place, let alone the bigger ones, and see how they
Yeah.
react to them. So if they invite you to their cousin's wedding on the first date and you're like, whoa, and then they get upset because you say no, you need
Right.
time for other events to happen to see if maybe they really did just like you that much that they thought it'd be fun to have you at their cousin's wedding, even though that's kind of a pink
Right.
flag. Or, and they're bummed you couldn't go, or are they trying to manipulate you by making you feel guilty right off the bat? So you need time to decide what their reaction is. Truly
Yeah.
bummed because they liked you a lot, or manipulative because they're trying to make you feel guilty on date one.
Right. Right. Setting those small things is so, yes, is so important. Just honestly having a different opinion or
Yes. Oh, I love that.
existing and acting as if you matter too. Like giving yourself just as much space as you give them.
I love it because if they're like, I love country music, don't you? And you're like, I really don't. See what they do with that. But say who you are, be who you
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why we also, it's important for us to take time to know who that is. And that's why I was saying in my experience, there was a period where I could not consider being with anybody else. I had to take time and space to just heal me, to get to know me. Because if we rush that and we get into another relationship, it's so easy a new relationship can kind of soothe those old wounds
Yeah.
because it can be hard to sit with that. But then that person or that relationship becomes what we are using to heal ourselves instead of doing that healing work on our own and building our own needs, desires, boundaries so that we even know if they're being crossed. Because how do you even
Yeah.
know if a boundary is being crossed if you don't even know what that looks like?
Again, it's so nuanced, but I just love everything you're saying. I'm for some reason all these random examples are popping in my mind, but these are like
Yeah.
real world little things that happen. So if you say you don't like country music, and then the next day they're like, "Well, I got tickets anyway. You need to come." And it's like, "Oh my God, I just
Right.
said I don't like." And so you need
Right.
time for all this to unfold and see what they do. And when you're like, "No, no, I really don't want to go," maybe you can invite someone else and see what they do with that. But it's like you need all these
Right.
opportunities to percolate and see what they do.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because a narcissist would likely push and ask you why don't you and then say that you're being mean or you're being rude or but I got these tickets for you and you're going to tell me no, you're going to make me go by myself, but I got this for you. And so you're already feeling that guilt and that they are transferring responsibility for their feelings onto you, and
Yeah.
that's a very telling behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned healing. And to you, Chelsey, what does rebuilding self-worth actually look like?
A huge part of a narcissistic relationship is the gaslighting that happens. And the simplest way to think about that is narcissists want to become the filter through which you see the world. That is the ultimate end of gaslighting.
Yeah.
They want to become the filter through which you see the world. They want to be that voice in your head. They want to be that omnipresent voice where if you're not around them, you are thinking, what would they think of this? What would they think if they saw me doing this? Oh, well, I could never, put these spoons like this if the narcissist was around because they would tell me I did it wrong. Like
Yeah.
that's a real example because that
Yeah.
happened to me. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. The
uh,
dishwasher, the
yeah,
dishes, the silverware. I know the thermostat. Yeah. Yeah.
everything. It's
Wow.
just has to be the way that they want it. And so you're thinking in your head, even when they're not around, how they're judging you, how they're criticizing you, and questioning yourself. So with that said, the most important thing we can do over time is the small things. It's gonna sound small, but it ends up becoming really big because narcissistic abuse is so big. We often think we need something really big to heal. Like,
Mm.
what's the one big thing? What's the one big strategy? Just tell me what it is and I'll do it. And we think that it's going to take something so big because the hurt is so big. But the reality is, a narcissistic relationship was 1,000 small cuts. And every step you take to set a boundary, to slow down, to listen to yourself, is like putting a band-aid over one of those cuts. So, in order to start taking your power back, getting to know yourself, becoming that authentic person, you have to know who you are. Two big things that I encourage people to do is first, slow down each day and ask yourself two questions, which is, how am I feeling and what do I need? How am I feeling? And you can do that as a quick body scan. Do you notice tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, upset in your stomach, chaos in your head? Do you notice that you feel hungry, angry, anxious, lonely, tired? And then what do I need? I don't mean what do I need to do, like more on my to-do list, but what do I need for how I'm feeling? How do I meet this need? Do I realize that I've been sitting at my desk all day and I haven't gotten up? So I really need to get up, walk, go outside. Do I feel really lonely because I realize I haven't connected with anybody? So I'm going to text a friend for lunch. Those small shifts matter because what that is saying, what you're showing yourself, is that you matter too. And that's one of the biggest things that narcissists take from us is getting you to a place where you feel like a shell of yourself, feel like you've been hollowed out from the inside. So when you slow down to say, how do I feel and what do I need? You are taking back the most fundamental thing that the narcissist has stolen from you.
Yeah. And I don't know why today I'm getting so many ideas of examples when you're talking, probably because the way you're articulating it is so good, Chelsey. So thank you. But I know one of the things I struggled with, and I'll give you a very specific example, was at dinner with girlfriends, three of them. And they were like, "What kind of wine should we have?" And somebody goes, "I don't know,
Mm,
Jackie, you pick." And they all go, "Yeah, you pick." And I
yeah.
froze. All I could think
Yeah.
of is, what if I pick a wine somebody doesn't like? That was my
Yeah.
first thought. And so I would say look for those opportunities in your life where you just get to decide, even
Yeah.
if it's for other people. Pick the cab and just go with it. They
Yeah.
they they told me to pick it, and yet I had this immediate like, what if I do it wrong? And so it's taking
Yeah.
those opportunities, picking the wine, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever, what flavor ice cream, what movie you're going to see, what
Yeah.
color t-shirts you're all going to wear on vacation, on your group vacation, whatever it is, pick it and go with it
Yeah.
and stand in your decision. And
That's very true.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I give very similar advice in my book actually and to my clients. It's actually a way to set boundaries too. I mean, going back
Mm,
to that boundaries topic, a lot of times we also think boundaries are so big. We're scared of them because it feels like a really big, scary thing.
Yeah.
And getting to know yourself also feels really big and scary. And with boundaries, then we'll often think of our most toxic relationships with the places we need boundaries the most. And that feels really overwhelming. So then we're like, boundaries scare me. I can't do it. So I say, start with something neutral, much
Hmm.
like you're saying. Start with a benign kind of thing. And even that can feel overwhelming at first
Yeah.
because the narcissist has criticized everything. And I think that can also relate to how we need to think about our triggers. A lot of times we get mad at ourselves for having triggers. Like in that example, you could have, I don't know how you responded to it, but you could have gotten upset with yourself. Like, what is wrong with me? I can't even pick a line.
Yeah.
I can't even decide what I want. But that to me doesn't reflect something is wrong with you. It reflected that something was wrong with the relationship you were in.
Right.
Triggers validate your reality. They mean what happened was real because you wouldn't have that kind of reaction if you weren't gaslighted over time. If you
What
weren't,
a profound way to look at triggers and what a mindset shift on them. Instead of,
yeah,
like you said, shaming yourself for having them, it's, oh, of course I'm having this trigger because what I went through was real
right,
and it was
right.
not okay. And it was damaging. So thank you for that. Wow. I absolutely love that. Thank you, Chelsey. Okay. So speaking of those triggers, can we go a little more into managing them?
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about that?
Yeah. So something I teach in my course too, which we can
Okay.
talk about. But sometimes triggers have a way of sneaking up on you. It's like you don't even realize something has bothered you or something has been festering because we do get so used to disconnecting from ourselves in
Mhm.
narcissistic relationships. And that's why I start with that. How do I feel and what do I need? Seems basic, but that is actually also a way that you get to know your triggers if you are taking time to notice what's going on in your body. A lot of times we just move throughout our day. We just try to push through. We've got kids, we've got responsibilities. We're like, I don't have time to sit and wonder what's going on or reflect on all these triggers or do all this healing work. But the very small things over time is what matters. So I often like to talk people through getting to know your triggers on a 1 to 10 scale.
Okay.
I will give people a list of possible triggers, like sharing an opinion on a trivial topic, setting a boundary with somebody that you know is going to disagree, just all kinds of different things. And then rating them on a 1 to 10 scale. How anxiety provoking does that sound? Give it a mild, moderate to I'm having a panic attack, like it's a
Yeah.
10. And then start slowly over time trying to take steps to, okay, well, this is uncomfortable but manageable. This is something that I know would be out of my comfort zone, but I think with support or time, I could do it. And start managing your triggers that way. You become aware of what your triggers are when you
Yeah, which
kind
is
of put
huge.
them on that scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
important first step.
Yeah. And it's a way to work up to it, really something called systematic desensitization. So you're not having to address the trigger once it's at an 8 or a 10. Because you need to be aware of what you feel like at a 3, 4, or 5, which sometimes we don't slow down enough to do. And if you start at the lower end of the scale, where it's like a mild trigger, where it's uncomfortable but manageable, then you're also building a lot of self-worth, self-efficacy. Like, okay, I'm at a 7 or 8, but I did this before. What worked then? You try to apply that now. And so you're building that self-esteem over time too.
Sure. And can I tell you something I do? I just did it a few days ago when something bothered me. And just like you were saying, say to yourself, okay, I'm at a 7 or 8. I now
Yeah.
say it out loud. And
Yeah.
for some reason, that is so, it takes a lot of the anxiety out of it for me
Mm,
to like verbally acknowledge it, even though I'm alone in my car by myself or whatever. So
yeah.
I don't know if you have any a take on that, if you've ever heard of that, but I'm now starting
Yeah.
to deliberately talk to myself out loud when I'm in those moments.
I do love that. I mean, there is research to suggest there's something different about talking out loud to yourself. It kind of actually I was just reading some articles in Psychology Today about how a lot of athletes or people who are performing will talk out loud to themselves about what they're going to do or what they want to do or what their goals are because there's something about externalizing it. So it's not just
Mhm.
in your head. Like it's coming at you from multiple senses. You're not just thinking it in your head.
Right.
Like you're hearing your voice say it.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
think there's just that aspect of it. And I think that it really helps just to be able to name what is happening. Like
Yes.
not just in your head and yeah, it's kind of hard to
Right.
work through,
Right.
but it's something that you are saying out loud to yourself. So you're bringing awareness to it. And then whenever you notice a need or emotion, it tends to just settle more than if we push back on it.
Yeah, it's a good
Like if
point.
we really if we're like, "Oh, I'm so mad that I'm depressed or anxious or I'm having this trigger, that trigger tends to get bigger. Because a lot of times, triggers in particular are just reminders. They're reminders of something painful, or it's your brain and body saying there's danger here. And so it's like getting mad at your hand for getting hot if it's on a hot stove.
Hmm.
It's telling you this is hot, you should move your hand. So is a trigger. It's saying something here doesn't feel good. Something here might be unsafe. It's not that you have to act on that trigger. You might say, okay, I'm noticing in my body that I'm really tense. I know why I'm feeling this way. This makes sense. That doesn't mean that you have to do whatever that trigger says. So if the trigger says you need to completely back out of that situation, you can't do that. Like if it's something at work, let's say who are you to give that presentation and you just freeze up or you get so anxious you can't imagine doing that. That trigger is just saying, hey, this might be uncomfortable. This is out of your comfort zone. This might be scary. That doesn't mean you have to go with that trigger and,
Right.
not do the thing,
Yeah.
but being aware of it just tends to settle it. Because a lot of times triggers they're just feedback.
Right. They're just your body's reaction, like you said, to past experiences. And so,
Yeah.
and sometimes they kind of get it wrong. I mean, it's just a reaction. You can't help it,
Yeah.
but they are warning you because maybe you're in the ballpark of something. Like my daughter used to have to stay up till 2 in the morning doing her homework every night for high school, and she literally got kind of traumatized from it. Frankly, I mean, it was on in papers,
Yeah.
and she always had to get A's and that kind of thing. And then later on in life, she was taking this course on something. And she kind of started to get triggered. And I said,
Mm.
your body's remembering
Yeah.
burning the candle at both ends. You were so tired. You were at your wits' end. You were in tears. You were up till 2 a.m. for
Mm.
weeks on end. And now you're taking a course on something you like. And you're like, why am I feeling this way? And so just reminds
Yeah.
me of that because it's like her body's remembering a similar situation, but it's kind of getting it wrong. So it's okay to say, this is why it's happening. It's not necessary. You don't need to live here right now. You don't need to come here.
Yes. Exactly.
I don't need you. I don't need this reaction right now. You got it wrong.
Right, right. Which is so good to just kind of personify or distance yourself from the trigger in that way. Like I'm noticing it, but I'm not in the trigger.
Yeah.
Even the language we use, like I know I'm noticing that I'm feeling anxious is very different than I'm anxious. Or
Wow.
even worse, I'm an anxious person.
Really good point.
Because then you're owning it as part of who you are. How are you going to change being an anxious person? Now you've got to change your whole identity versus I'm a
Wow.
person who sometimes experiences anxiety.
Chelsey, that's so amazing because I really want people to listen to that because words matter. The way you talk to yourself
Mhm.
matter. Would you say that one more time, like kind of like the three variations?
Yes, there's a big difference in saying I'm anxious, I'm an anxious person, or I'm a person who sometimes experiences anxiety.
Okay.
The latter, of course, it's something that happens sometimes, but it's not all of you. It
Hmm.
doesn't happen all the time. This is actually really important to getting out of a learned helplessness mindset where we tend to make everything pervasive. Like, I'm always going to feel this way. This is affecting every area of my life and it's never going to change. Versus a growth mindset is this is something that's upsetting for now. There are still other things, good things that I have in my life. It's not affecting everything and it's not going to last forever. And if we can have that kind of growth mindset, it's everything feels more manageable versus it's a pessimistic explanatory style.
Yeah. It's like doom and gloom. It's never going to get
Yes.
better. There's no answer.
And we can get caught in it. Like, honestly, this is what a lot of what I do with people in the beginning, why I'm so encouraging of people to be self-reflective and why that's
Hmm.
so powerful, because you cannot change what you don't know you're doing.
Yes.
And you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So you have to slow down to go, how do I talk to myself? What are my thoughts usually like? How do I normally feel? How do I respond to things? And practice some metacognition, which is just thinking about your own thoughts.
Yeah. Thinking about what you're thinking about,
Hmm.
which is such an amazing ability that we have as humans. That we can actually think about our thoughts. I mean, it's such a sort of
Yeah.
an abstract thing,
Yeah.
to try to grasp, but it's so true and it's so powerful. And we don't even realize the self-talk that has, we've culminated all these little digs about ourselves over years. And in fact, I have an
Yeah.
example of my mom passed away in high school, and I was, of course, doing bad in harder subjects because I was very stressed out,
Yeah.
understandably. And so things like math and science, but chemistry, biology, I got D's and barely passed. In fact, I always joke that the chemistry professor was or teacher was my dad's best friend. So we'll never really know if I passed chemistry. But I went on to college and I was going to major in other things. And I had a professor stop me, chemistry professor. And long story short, he sort of forced me to take his chemistry class. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I told him I'm not good at chemistry. And I went in there and he was the most amazing professor ever in the
Mm,
history of professors. And I walked out loving that class. And I went on to
wow.
take 8 more chemistry classes. And then I took biology. And then I graduated with a biology degree and a chemistry emphasis. And I told myself a story based off a bad experience I had that didn't even have to do with that, but I labeled myself that back in high school, and that was going to be who I was. And it kind of reminds me when you're like,
Mm,
don't adopt this label of I am an anxious person. I am someone who's not good at chemistry. I went through a hard time and had struggled in a chem class. Those
big.
are two very different things. And so
Yeah.
it's very powerful the way that you have
Mm,
instructed us to structure our our
yeah.
statements towards ourselves.
I love that example. That's so true because we hear that a ton. I'm not a math person. I'm not a science person. I'm not a whatever. And we own that label. I don't think that we are even aware probably
No.
of how many labels we have put on ourselves. And
Yeah.
then like you said, I really like narrative therapy as well, which just really dives into what are the stories that you've told yourself? What stories do you believe about yourself, others in the world? And it's
Yeah.
so powerful
So
because if
powerful.
you
In fact, listeners, try this practice. I just thought of this. I mean, think of all the ways, even just jokingly fun things you say. I'm a bad driver. I'm
yeah,
not a good cook. But I bet you will come up with 10 of them within a couple minutes, right?
for sure.
That we just, and then challenge them. I mean, just for fun, just for somewhere to start. Because we all have a thing that we say we're not good at. And is it
And that
really
is
true?
right. And we're probably, like you said, making up a whole identity based on maybe one thing, like
Yeah.
one behavior, one
Right.
experience. And
Right.
that's exactly how you move from a pessimistic to an optimistic explanatory style, like basically
Yeah.
from a negative to a positive mindset is challenge that pessimistic explanatory style. When you explain something to yourself, like, well, that happened because I'm bad at this, and this always happens to me, and it's always gonna happen to me.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll challenge that. Is that actually true? What are some instances and times when, you cooked a good meal and you got really positive feedback on it,
Hmm.
or you actually did do well on a test, or you did have a relationship or a friendship that did grow and you were able to build trust? I think that's a lot of the beliefs that we come out of narcissistic relationships with is maybe I'm no good at relationships. I have a bad picker. My picker's broken. I can't set boundaries.
My picker's
I'm not a
broken.
person who
Big one.
sets boundaries. Yeah,
Yeah.
all those things. And
Yeah.
so challenge that belief because I can guarantee you can find instances when that's not true.
Yeah. And this comes full circle back to narcissistic abuse because
Hmm.
they are working so hard for you to develop negative self-talk through
Yeah.
these narratives they develop and the brainwashing. I always say, what are the one or two things he or she always says about you? You always do this wrong. And they usually can tell me right away. Oh,
Mm,
I'm always doing this and I'm that. And I'm like, how long have they been saying that? Oh, for the whole 20 years we were married. And I'm
mm-hmm.
like, that was so deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
to
do you
wear you
find
down.
that as well?
Oh, for sure. People come out of narcissistic relationships with all kinds of negative beliefs. And that's why we don't know who we are or what to trust. Or, yeah, we lose our identity in these relationships because huge part of narcissistic abuse is that you are told who you are. You are told what to do. You are told what to think. You are told what to feel. And you're told that everything you think and feel on your own is wrong. They work very hard to control your inner world. They want to be that voice in your head because they know that's the most powerful place they can be. So a lot of
Absolutely.
the work outside of a narcissistic relationship is healing that and making sure that your voice is the one that you are most familiar with.
Absolutely. I thought of the statement, it's almost like you're not allowed to look at life through your own lens. Like you said, they want you
Yeah.
to only have their lens. So you're not even allowed. Like, don't you dare even, look out the
Yes.
window with your own eyes. You have to come through me first and get my
They
permission.
they view it as a betrayal. They will frame it as a betrayal for you to have your own thoughts, for you to be independent, for you to be autonomous. They'll frame it as you're going against them. You don't care about them. You're ungrateful. Because narcissists personalize everything. You're either for or against them. There is
Mhm.
no you can exist as your own autonomous, sovereign individual, and you can have an opinion, and it has nothing to do with me. It's just how you want to do things.
Yeah.
There's no reality where that works for a narcissist. So not
Yeah.
only do they frame it as you're not allowed to, but you're bad if you do see
Right.
things your way.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you one last question that kind of leads us a little bit back into the divorce and based off everything you just described that a
Yeah.
narcissist does and demands of you and the, puts on you. What communication strategies do you think actually work with them if you are in a situation where you do still have to communicate?
And this is another thing. People think there's no communication strategies that work with narcissists. There are, but they are not any of the standard conventional advice that you'll hear.
Okay, I love this.
Don't tell them how you feel. Don't share your hopes, dreams, opinions with them. So I guess a few things that stand out. Something that I would teach people or tell people to do is the R&R approach, which is just something I like. I like alliterations and acronyms. I think that they're helpful. So
I do too.
recognize the reality and respond with restraint. What I mean by that is recognize the reality that you're not really having a conversation when you're talking to a narcissist. You're in the presence of their monologue, you're not having a dialogue. The conversation is never really about what the narcissist says. Let's say the narcissist texts you and say, "Hey, when is your son's game tonight? What time is that at?" That's not actually, they're not wanting to know what time the game is because they could call the coach, they could look at the schedule. They're
This is
wanting
so huge.
Yeah, they're wanting to open the door. They want you responding to them. It's going to lead to something else. And anybody who's had a conversation with a narcissist knows you think, innocent, I'll just respond to that real quick and we'll be done. You're not. 2 hours later, you're going back and forth with them. It's about something completely different. You're like, how did I even get here? They just asked what time the kid's schedule was. So recognize the reality. It is not about that. You're looking for it's a manipulation, it's passive aggressive, it's gaslighting. You may not always know exactly what it is. Sometimes over time, actually, you can get quite good at knowing exactly what a narcissist is after.
Yeah.
Other people might not be able to see it, but you can look at a text and go, they're trying to get me to respond because this happened, because this. So oftentimes you do get pretty good at knowing it, but recognize that that's what you're dealing with. Second is respond with restraint. What I mean by that is never make it a priority to get back to a narcissist.
Amen.
I understand that there are emergencies, outside of emergencies, which most things are not, especially like if you have kids or something, you have to get back to. Even within that, it's usually within a few hours. Are you required, even court ordered, to get back with them?
Agreed.
Because I suggest leaving at least an hour in between them texting you and you responding, because you want to shift the dynamic in that relationship. The narcissist is used to and will always push you to prioritize them. They're entitled enough to think that they text you, you should be right on your phone responding to them. They should be able to get a hold of you when, where, however. It doesn't matter what your new relationship status is. It doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter what your responsibilities are. They want immediate access to you. And we have to teach them that's not going to happen.
So true.
So always have that hour buffer. And then when you do respond, it's very minimal. It's very fact-based. People might have heard of BIF, brief, informative, friendly, firm. That can be a helpful acronym just to remember how to structure a text or an email back to them. But I think keeping those two things in mind, like recognize the reality of what's going on here and respond with restraint, can be really helpful as you frame communication with them, because otherwise you can feel bad, like, oh, I'm just withholding this information for them. Like, I wouldn't like it if somebody waited an hour to text me when I'm just asking something simple. So am I being mean or kind of ridiculous or difficult to just not get back to them? No, because they're not communicating in the way that you are. They're not being genuine. They're not wanting to compromise. You can guarantee whatever communication that they're giving you, they want something. It has an angle. You don't always know what it is.
Right.
But it has an angle, which comes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Narcissists are fundamentally different than you, and accepting and recognizing that will give you a lot more peace with the kind of strategies you have to use in these relationships.
So true. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that, Chelsey. I love all of that. So tell people remind everyone your book again, if you would, please, and where we can find it.
You can find it anywhere books are sold, but it's called If Only I'd Known: How to Outsmart Narcissists, Set Guilt-Free Boundaries, and Create Unshakable Self-Worth.
I love it. And then your program, Rewired for Resilience. What is that about?
Yeah. So this came out of a culmination, honestly, of decades of my own healing, working with clients, having spent thousands of hours working with clients at this point. When you're so close to this work like I am, you start to see patterns over time of what people need to heal. There's typical phases, there's typical things people need to know. Like, I was having the same conversations with people over and over, educating them on the same things, helping them through very similar things. And so that's really what this Rewired for Resilience program came out of. So it's my 6-step unshakable method to healing from narcissistic abuse. It has 12 modules in the course that you can dive into immediately when you join. And then I also know that sometimes people can get stuck. When you're going through just a course, it can be easy to be like, well, what about this? Or what about this situation? Or my narcissist is a little bit different. And then you get stuck. And then what do? We don't even finish the course because we're like, I don't know how to get through this module or this course or this lesson. So with the course, you also get 2 times a week support groups with me for 12 weeks. So you get in there, you get stuck, you get ruminating, you have a question about your situation, you can hop on a support group. There's also a private healing community and more therapists created and approved resources as well. So it's just a comprehensive tool for narcissistic abuse recovery.
Awesome. And do they go to your website to find that?
Yes.
Okay.
On
what
my
is
website,
that?
chelseybrookecole.com.
I love it. Thank you so much. Chelsey Brooke Cole, psychotherapist, best-selling author, speaker, specializing in narcissistic abuse. Thank you so much for all of your amazing insights today. That was absolutely incredible. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was
all
fun.
right. Take care, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thanks, good.